Well, greetings everyone. Welcome to the Apptrepreneur Show. I am your host, Kevin the Apptrepreneur. This is your near daily dose of tech, apps, and even a little bit of entertainment on the side. Although, just to let you know, there's going to be a lot of tech today because yesterday Congress decided it was finally time to start grilling the big tech companies on their monopolistic powers and antitrust concerns. Now, there is a lot to uncover, so much so that I am even considering doing live streams on all four of the CEOs and kind of addressing them as they go along. However, we have picked a few of the stories to discuss today. We will probably discuss a few more tomorrow and Monday. That's just how it's going to be. And however, we do have, before we begin everything, a announcement. It's a very, very, very small announcement. Really, it's almost trivial, but this will give people a chance to come to the live stream. And that is that the Apptrepreneur Vlogs channel has received a name change. I know, big deal, right? Like a huge catastrophic thing. Instead of being called the Apptrepreneur Vlogs, it is now called the Apptrepreneur Media. Because you know what, really, I have not been vlogging nearly as much, and I have been focusing on physical media, the streaming wars, and entertainment on this channel. And I think the Apptrepreneur Media more properly reflects where the channel is going. Now, what about the vlogs? Are the vlogs going to completely disappear? No. I have decided that the vlogs will be, with rare exceptions, exclusive to YouTube and Patreon members. So if you want to see the vlogs still, you can still do so. You just have to be a YouTube member or Patreon member, as little as $1 a month, and you will have access to those videos. Otherwise, the Apptrepreneur Media is now going to be about media, streaming wars, and other topics such as that. So, like I said, not a huge deal, not the biggest change in the world, just something that is happening. Hey, we've got Joe here, we've got Brian here. Welcome, gentlemen. I am so glad you are here. So anyway, let's get this show started, and you know how the show works at this point. We will be doing several topics. Feel free to comment in the chat section and ask questions, because after each topic, we will be addressing those questions. That's really the topic, and after the show, we might do a little bit of Q&A afterwards if we have time. However, with that out of the way, let's discuss our main topic. And our main topic involves Uber and the taxi cab industry. Now, ever since I've started this channel, the taxi company has hated Uber. And here's the thing. Out of all the things that I dislike about Uber, I'm not... I don't necessarily think I'm on their side, or I'm against them, I should say, when taxi companies come up and they say Uber has destroyed our business. While it is true that Uber has done some unscrupulous things, particularly to the drivers, I've always questioned whether or not a taxi company or union or whatever could sue Uber for undercutting their price. After all, Uber did a lot more than just make a cheaper product. They made a more effective product. They made a way more effective product. I mean, you have to keep in mind, with taxis, before the whole mobile thing came along, you had to hail down a taxi, or you had, if you didn't live in like New York City or some place where they were readily available, you had to call the taxi, you had to set up a time, and then you had to hope that they would show up, because sometimes they wouldn't show up, and they were super expensive, and they were smelly, and really, the taxi industry, I think, was a very, very outdated business in the sense that it just lost sight of customer service. Uber came along, and yes, they did make a cheaper product. However, they also made it convenient. You want a ride? You open your app and you tap a button. Heck, you can even schedule in advance now if you want. You want a clean car? Guess what? You can rate the quality of the driver and the car. And if someone consistently shows poor quality, we will kick that person off, and we will keep the good drivers and cars on the service. Uber, aside from just making a cheaper product, revolutionized the taxi industry, because that's what they are. They are a taxi company when you get down to it. Nevertheless, taxis have attempted to sue Uber and probably Lyft for undercutting their prices. And well, the California Supreme Court says that Uber can't be sued for that. So, here's what the article from the San Francisco Chronicle says. The state Supreme Court rejected an appeal by taxi companies Wednesday of a ruling that shields Uber from claims of illegally cutting prices in order to damage its cab driving competitors. Lawsuits in 2017 by Yellow Cab and Friendly Cab Cause and a proposed class action suit by a San Francisco taxi driver accuse Uber of violating a 1937 California law that prohibits setting prices below the cost of service for the purpose of injuring competitors and destroying competition. The law, however, does not apply to any product or service for which rates are established under the jurisdiction of the California Public Utilities Commission. Uber is considered a transportation network under state law. It's interesting. They've been arguing that they are a technology company. The State Utilities Commission has jurisdiction over its rates and has been studying the ride-hailing company's rate-setting procedures for the past 7 years, but has not acted to regulate those rates or announced any intention to do so. A state appeals court ruled in March that the law giving the state commission authority over Uber's rates had the effect of barring suits by competitors over those rates. The companies and the taxi driver appealed to the state's high court, but the court said Wednesday that only Justice Mariano Florentino Suelar, I probably pronounced that wrong, had voted to take up the case, 3 short of a majority need for review of the 7-member court. The appellant ruling is now binding on trial courts statewide. In its March 23 ruling, the First District Court of Appeal in San Francisco cited 3 previous decisions by Bay Area federal judges in suits by other competitors of Uber. While not binding precedent, the rulings were persuasive, the court said. In one of those rulings dismissing a suit by a limousine company challenging Uber's rates, U.S. District Judge Edward Chen of San Francisco said in June 2019 that those rates are, quote, established under the jurisdiction of the CPU, irrespective of whether the CPUC actually exercises its rate-setting authority. Deciding whether rate setting in the public interest, Chen said the commission considers whether its abstention would damage competition or harm consumers. The appeals court also noted that the rates of publicly owned utilities are exempt from price-cutting suits under state laws, even if those rates are not set by the State Public Utility Commission. Protecting companies like Uber from such suits will, quote, ensure that privately owned and publicly owned public utility corporations are treated the same under the law, Justice Kathleen Banks said in the 3-0 ruling. Lawyers for the taxi companies and Ubers were not immediately available to comment, which is strange. Normally, Uber is out there bragging about this. So let's look and see exactly what is going on. So here's what they sued them for. The proposed class action suit by a San Francisco taxi driver accused Uber of violating a 1937 California law that prohibits setting prices below the cost of service for the purpose of injuring competitors or destroying competition. Now, here's the thing. On the surface, that's a pretty compelling argument because I would say that Uber is definitely predatory in their pricing. However, and this is where it gets tricky, Uber is not strictly considered a transportation service. Interestingly, they consider it a transportation network, but many judges have not ruled them to be so. So, and here's the other, so that's one thing. Uber's not technically in this business on paper. But here's the other thing. The other thing is that the law prohibits setting prices below the cost of service. Well, if Uber is dealing with, in theory, independent contractors, where the independent contractors maintain the vehicles, buy the gas, buy the water, do all those things, then Uber's cost of service is much, much lower. It is much, much lower. So it would be a hard argument to make that Uber is undercutting their own prices when their own business model is already a low-cost operation. It's practically zero to a certain extent. I know it's not really because, they have to maintain the app and they have servers and everything. But, they don't have the cars or anything like that. And here's the other thing. Normally, these lawsuits fly when you have a bigger company undercutting the competition of a smaller company. And that's going to be important because we will discuss that later when it comes to another company and the antitrust hearings that Capitol Hill had yesterday with the big tech companies. There's actually 2 examples we have of that. But in this case, Uber, when they started undercutting the taxis, were not established. They were the underdogs. They were not a multi-billion-dollar business. They were a startup. So it's hard to make the argument that they undercut the competitors when they themselves were not established. Like, the courts have much more scrutiny when, say, an Amazon comes in, and yeah, you can probably figure out where this is going to be going later on, and says, hey, we want to sell this product. These guys sell that product. They've been established. They are the dominant force, so we are going to undercut them in that market. Well, okay, that actually, I made a mistake in that analogy. Really, when they say, like, hey, we are selling something, let's say they sell bottled water for $1 a bottle. Someone comes along, startup, they're selling the bottled water for 50 cents a bottle. Amazon says, you know what? At 50 cents a bottle, they become a competitor, so let's lower it to 35 cents a bottle. Courts have a much more strict sense on that because Amazon is established, and in fact, they have a lot of power. Uber did not have power when they were doing this. They were just trying to make their business model attractive. Now, I think it's bad business for them to keep the rates the way they are. They're not making money off of them. But then that's why aren't the taxis out of business? So I think there's a lot of varieties on why the courts did not side with the taxis on this one. And again, I do not want to give off the impression that I think Uber is innocent. I absolutely believe that their pricing is predatory by nature. It is absolutely predatory. But it's hard to make that case when on paper they're not a transportation company. I know that they are, but on paper they aren't. And of course, when they were doing this, they did not have an established presence, which means they were just trying to compete and get their foot in the door. It actually would have been, this might have been taken more seriously if had Uber started doing this and then the taxi company undercut their prices, like they lowered them so that Uber couldn't even get a foothold, then ironically Uber might have been able to sue the taxi companies, and Uber might have been successful in that area. I know, it's not fair. That's the way it works, though. So anyway, I would like to know, though, what you think of this. Do you agree with the California Supreme Court? Do you disagree with them? What are your takes on this? I'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one. All right, now then, let us take a look at some of the comments going on. So we have Abstract Echo here, and George, welcome, guys. And Abstract Echo says, Calvary makes a high-end cigarette lighter, Zippo makes a mid-price, and Bic has a lower-price lighter. Uber is the Bic of taxi. Yeah, I agree. That's a good analogy. And Romeo is now called What Life Have for Us. Well, interesting. Hey, by the way, if you haven't given a thumbs up yet, please do. That would be very welcome. Now, Abstract Echo says you have to consider the intentions of Uber. Their intention is to provide a service, not to injure the taxi companies. That's just a byproduct of their business model. I actually agree with that. I actually agree with that. Now, again, that said, I'm not going to pretend that Uber's not being here trying to be undercut. I mean, one of the earliest stories that I covered was when Sidecar went out of business, and they made a pretty compelling case that every time they made a deal, Uber undercut them. Like, Sidecar would say, okay, this is our price, and Uber would undercut them. Okay, this is our price, Uber would undercut them. And then Uber and Lyft would continue to undercut each other. Sidecar said that, yeah, Uber is very dedicated to putting us out of business, and we can't compete with those low prices. And they went under. And I still suspect that Travis Kalanick, emboldened by this, was like, we got Sidecar to go under. Maybe we can get Lyft too, and they got into a pricing war with Lyft, but Lyft turned out to be pretty resilient. And now both companies are stuck in this super low wage that neither of them can cut either more, but neither can raise their prices either, because the second the price goes up on one of these services, then the other will lose. Then they will lose money to the other competitor. That's what they will do. So there is some predatoriness here, but as I had explained, they were a startup. They're just trying to get a foot in the door, and really matching prices in and of itself isn't illegal. There are much more concerning uses of lowering the prices, and I forgot to put my phone on silent. Oops. Sorry, folks. It's my dad. But sorry, Dad. I'll have to call you back on that. You gotta love live, right? Anything can happen when you're live. So anyway, I agree. Rideshare Source Driver says, give more likes, watchers. Oh, well, yes, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. And he also says, in Chicago, riders claim taxis are undesirable service. Well, I can see why they would be considered undesirable services, because they, frankly, kind of suck. But that's neither here nor there. So anyway, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic we're going to follow up on the Universal deal with AMC Theaters. Now, for those of you who did not catch a couple days ago on my Failed Journalist channel, although I talked about it on the Apptrepreneur show as well, it was actually a surprise 8th topic a few days ago. AMC struck a historic deal with Universal Pictures, whereas they would shorten the window of the movie from having to be in theaters for 90 days to just 17 days before it could start going to premium video on demand, which I suspect, it's not confirmed, but I suspect a certain time of that window will be exclusive to AMC on demand. Now, I've done its own live stream where this is just such a bad idea on so many levels. It's not only bad for AMC, it's bad for Universal. We know what Universal wants to do. They basically want to reshape the movie distribution model to benefit them. And there have been a lot of reactions. But interestingly, no one's really on their side. Although NATO, the National Association Theater Organization, has not actually made a claim, we know that Regal and Cinemark are not for this. We know that Disney and Warner Brothers will not be making a deal like this. But the funniest thing is now Universal has to actually explain what their thinking behind this is. Because as I explained in one of the live streams, shortening the window is detrimental to everyone. Most of a movie's money is still made in the theaters. It's not made on Netflix. I know you want to believe that paying Netflix $15 a month is enough to justify them making a $200 million movie like The Irishman. It's not. And a $200 million movie with Ryan Reynolds, it's also not going to cover that. But Universal crazily says that the deal will get movies back in theaters faster. Really? All right, let's look at this. This was almost funny. Okay, so Universal recently struck the landmark deal that will make it possible for newly released movies to arrive on premium VOD as soon as 17 days after their initial release. This has proved to be a controversial move within the industry, but it is one that NBC Universal CEO Jeff Shell thinks will ultimately help get movies back to theaters faster. Movie theaters has been closed in the U.S. since mid-March, with the hope being that they can open by mid to late August in time for Tenet and other movies coming down the pipeline. During a recent quarterly earnings call, Jeff Shell addressed the AMC deal, explaining that the ability to release movies on premium VOD as well as in theaters may create enough financial incentive to get them in theaters. Here's what we had to say about this. We currently are stuck in a kind of chicken and the egg situation in the theatrical business. Movie studios like ours don't want to release movies into theaters when there are only a smattering of theaters open. We need a pretty robust amount of theaters open to justify our spend, but the flip side is exhibitors can't open a bunch of theaters if they don't have any new movies to put in them. Old library movies are not going to drive people to movie theaters. Well, that's not true, but we'll get to that in a minute. So we think this model will actually allow movies to come back to theaters when it's safe a lot more quickly than they would have in the current environment. Yeah, so this is Universal's response to kind of make it seem like they're still the good guys. But no, they're not. First of all, let's just comment this thing. Old library movies are not going to drive people back to the theaters. Oh no, they will, especially when the theaters have been shuttered for 8 months and people have been stuck indoors. Here's the thing. I have gone to some classic movies at drive-in theaters. We're talking Jaws, Indiana Jones, E.T. We saw My Spy, which was an Amazon movie. We could have easily streamed it for free on Amazon Prime. We decided to go to the drive-in theaters and pay for it. Every single time I've gone to the drive-in theater, it's been sold out. Now, on a 3,000 plus screen scale, maybe that wouldn't be a sustainable business model, but here's the thing. Right now, people do want to go back to the theater. So old movies will drive people to the theaters, at least for the time being. Now, let's address this other thing. Let's see here. We need a pretty robust amount of theaters to justify our spend. I kind of agree on that. But here's the thing. But the flip side is exhibitors can't open a bunch of theaters if they don't have any movies to put out them. So we think this model will actually allow movies to come back to theaters when it's safe a lot more quickly than they would have in the current environment. No, that's not how this works. Because if people can stream the movie at home, they will. So this does not do anything good for the movie theaters. In fact, if you want to know what will bring people back to the theaters faster, you keep movies in theaters longer. For a time being, because here's the thing, the movie theater attendance is capped. They can only have so many movies out there right now. You keep the movies in theaters a little longer. And eventually someone will probably want to see Tenet in theaters. Hey, it opens up in September, but they're not sure if it's safe. Well, September comes. And then October comes. Maybe November comes. They're like, you know what? We know people who are going to the movie theaters, and they're not getting sick. So we really want to see Tenet, and it's still there, so let's go see Tenet. But the fact that Jeff Shell is saying that this model will bring people back to theaters, this is a guy who has not been in the industry long enough to know how this works. Now, I already shared this story on one of my other live streams, but I'm going to share it again. People are cheap, and they love their convenience. This is human nature. I'm old enough to remember when it was like almost a year between The Lion King, the 1994 animated movie, went to theaters to VHS. I believe it opened in July of 1994. Huge hit. It was like in the top 5 for several months. And then Christmas comes around. Now, if this was in the mid-2000s, it would have been on VHS. Instead, Disney decided, you know what, we're going to re-release The Lion King for 2 weeks during Christmas. And then the VHS came out in April to record-breaking sales for VHS tapes because you had deprived people of it so long, it kept the movie valuable. Now, come the mid-2000s, you start seeing movies like Finding Nemo and The Lord of the Rings and The Matrix actually making a little bit more money on DVD than it did in theaters. And those movies made a ton of money in theaters. So, movie studios start thinking, like, maybe we should start bringing the DVDs sooner so that we can collect in more of that money early on. And it works for a while, but here's the problem. People start to catch on about this. They start to realize, like, hey, if we've missed the movie in the first 3 weeks, maybe 4, if we wait just a little bit longer, we can just buy the DVD and we can own it and we can watch it as many times as we want. That's what they're going to do. And that became the normal. In fact, that became so much the normal that the opening day weekend box office became more important than ever, because there's very little time for something to become a word of mouth hit. And even if it becomes a word of mouth hit, by the time the word gets out that this is worth seeing, you might already be halfway towards the DVD coming out. You might as well wait. If Universal is thinking, well, most movies make the majority of their money in the first 3 weekends, so after that, we might as well put it on digital for the people who hung out. That's not how this is going to work. Like, yeah, that's how it's going to work at first, but then think about like a family movie. Like, let's take the next Minions movie. If the family doesn't see it in the first 2 weeks, okay, it's still in theaters that next weekend, but then the family is thinking, hey, you know what? Let's wait 1 more week. If we wait 1 more week, we can buy it at home, we can invite the neighbors over, and we'll all watch it. Basically, you're looking at a movie at $2 a head. You are undercutting your own business model when you do this. You devalue it. And then there is the next logical step. What if this stuff goes directly to streaming anyway? I've already talked about this on the show. Scoob was one of the very, very few things that I bought digitally during this pandemic because it wasn't in theaters at all. $20. But a month later, it was on HBO Max for free. And had I known that, I would not have spent $20 on it. But then, what's the next step? Okay, it goes straight to streaming. But then, human nature, we want things cheap, we want it convenient. Well, you know, I'm already paying for a subscription to HBO Max. If I stop buying these premium on-demand movies, I will just see them a month later for free. I'll just see them a month later for free. This is bad all around. In fact, Cineworld, the owners of Regal, they had some very strong words. They said, we do not see any business sense in this model. And they have also said, by the way, that they will not partake, which, you know, I was getting a little depressed thinking about this situation yesterday, because I know some of you don't care, but I love going to the movies. Movies is where my real passion is. I've got so many movies. We're watching a movie pretty much every day. This week, my wife and I have been doing like a foreign language film marathon. We've just been watching foreign language films. And if you go to my Apptrepreneur Media page, you can see the shopping spree that I did at Barnes & Noble with the Criterion sale. And the idea of not going back to theaters just kind of breaks my heart. But here's the other thing. AMC may be the largest distributor in the world, but the other theaters have clout too. If Regal said that they will not show Universal movies if they do not, honor the 90-day window. So if they refuse to do that, then Universal has 2 choices at this point. They either forget this 17-day nonsense and keep the 90-day window, or they push ahead anyway, and they just don't show their movies on Regal or Cinemark. And by that extension, they are not on half of the screens in America. In America, there might even be some markets they're not able to show in theaters at all. And in fact, there are some countries where Regal is there, but not AMC, and they will not go to those countries. How's that going to work out for them? So this is a bad deal all around. However, I would like to know, what do all of you think about this? Do you agree this is a bad deal, or do you like this deal? And what about this deal do you like? And what about this deal do you not like? I'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. All right, let's see what people... Let's see. Rideshare Source Driver says, what does the shirt say? The shirt, I guess I can say this. It's a Sailor Moon shirt. I like Sailor Moon. I am not gonna lie. I do love that show. So, Rideshare Source Driver also says, drive-in movies in big parking lots with projector on a sheet, closed windows. Yep, I've done that several times. It's really, really nice. So, I have to admit, I'm enjoying the drive-in theaters quite a bit, so much so that I might actually make it a point to still go to drive-in theaters after the theaters reopen, but I do miss the theaters. All right. With that, since that's all the comments there are, let's move on to main topic number 3. And for the third main topic, we have discussed how working has changed quite a bit since the pandemic started. One of the things that I think might be a positive is that companies might realize people don't need to come to the office to do their work. They can work from home. They don't have to spend time in traffic. They don't have to use gas. We can reduce traffic and our carbon footprint with the CO2 emissions. And companies can save money by downsizing on their offices. Basically, have a few offices for those who absolutely want to go to an office to work, and everyone else can work from home, and everybody wins. Well, Zillow is the latest company to jump on this bandwagon because they are going to allow 90% of their employees to work from home indefinitely. So here's the article from GeekWire. Zillow Group, who has the website for like the housing listings for the record, introduced a new policy on Wednesday allowing about 90% of its employees the option of working from home indefinitely, significantly extending a move the company made at the end of April in response to the coronavirus pandemic. The new plan was spelled out in a blog post from Dan Spalding, the Seattle-based real estate company's chief people officer, in which he said the company always planned to be, quote, responsive to changing conditions. 3 months ago, Zillow was one of the first companies to announce an extended work-from-home option, enabling approximately 5,400 employees to go remote through the end of 2020. Quote, this is a dramatic change from where we started the year. We have historically discouraged employees from working from home, preferring FaceTime and in-office collaboration versus virtual exchanges. Our old preferences have been debunked during the pandemic. The sentiment echoes what Zillow CEO Rich Barton said back in April on Twitter and follows what many companies are learning about the potential for worker collaboration and productivity during the ongoing health crisis. And Rich Barton on Twitter said, today we let our team know that they have flexibility to work from home or anywhere through the end of 2020. My personal opinions about work from home have been turned upside down over the past 2 months. I expect this will have a lasting influence on the future of work and home. Stay safe out there. And, I'm totally glad to see this happening. In fact, you might have heard I have, gotten a new job. I haven't quite started. I'm starting on Monday. So, by the way, the podcast might have a different schedule in the near future. And we also might not be doing quite as many of them, but there will still be daily uploads on this channel when that starts. But anyway. And so I'm going to have to start going into the office, if you will. And I'm going to have to do that for a couple months. However, they have said that, because of the pandemic, more people are working from home. So after you've proven yourself and after you beat this probation period and you show that you can do this job, you can work from home. And I think this is good. Because you know what I hate? I hate about work. A real job is the darn traffic. I hate getting up and going to work. If I can work from home, preferably in my PJs, that is great. And hey, you know what? Here's the thing. That hour that I spend in traffic, I'd much rather spend that doing overtime for a company. And you could save gas, thus you save money, and thus there's less traffic. I still think there would be a rush hour. I think the new rush hour would be like 5, because if the vast majority of people are working from home, then come 5 o'clock, they'd want to go out to dinner or a movie or a baseball game or something. So there's probably that. But I think this is a good move on Zillow's part, and I do believe that work from home is the future. And I think we're just going to see more and more of it. So anyway, I would love to know what all of you think about this. Would you want to work from home? Are you already working from home? I'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. All right, let's see what people are saying. So, hey, Ryan, how are you doing? And Brian says, congratulations. Well, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. So, all right, so since we don't have any comments on that one, let's move on to main topic number 4. Now, this is going to be an interesting topic because this topic is being brought to you via a Patreon request. Yes, just to let everyone know, I know it's a shameless plug, but if you donate a certain amount of money on Patreon, and this comes from David, then I will touch on a news topic. In fact, I'm even considering adding a tip jar where if there is a topic you specifically want me to talk about on one of these podcasts, you just have to chip in a couple dollars, and if I wasn't going to talk about it before, I will talk about it now. But anyway, Netflix made an acquisition. Well, I don't know if it's an acquisition, but they made a licensing deal that, of course, caught Twitter afire. They announced that they had licensed several classic black sitcoms. Now, one of the reasons Netflix is likely doing this is because of the Black Lives Matter movement. They want to show diversity, and so as a result, they are picking up these old shows, some of which are good. I'm not gonna say that there's no value in getting these shows whatsoever, but they are acquiring these shows to show more diversity in their content. Now then, the shows that they have picked up include Moesha, Girlfriends, The Parkers, Sister Sister. I believe Smart Guy is one of them. Okay, no, Smart Guy's not one of them, but The Game is one of them, and Half and Half is one of them, and One on One. And then they have, actors from the respective shows talking about the shows and how happy they are that they're coming to Netflix. Now, of course, this made a lot of people happy. Now, I'm going to be frank. I remember as a kid liking Sister Sister. I do believe I like Moesha. I only vaguely remember The Parkers. I don't like Girlfriends or The Game. I haven't seen Half and Half or One on One. But once this announcement was made, there were people who were asking, where some of the other shows, like where's Family Matters, which I like quite a bit, or where's the Jamie Foxx show, where's Brandy, as if just because this show aired on UPN or WB meant that those two companies own the rights to all of these shows. Now, the reason this became a requested topic from David is because he was furious, absolutely furious, that the ultimate of ultimate black sitcoms from the 90s was not on this list. And that, of course, was The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, starring Will Smith. Now, I like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, it was not one of my favorites growing up, but I do remember watching it with my friends, and we did enjoy it. So, if you want to know where The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is, it's here, if it will load. It's here on HBO Max. The entire 6 seasons on HBO Max. So if you want The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, this is where you have to watch it. And some of you might think that's unfair, and that is one of the downsides of having multiple streaming services. But there you go. So, and here's the thing. I actually did rewatch just one episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when I realized it was there. I have to admit, yeah, it is a good show. It is a very, very good show. I can see why this made Will Smith a star, and I can see, it's kind of like brought back some memories. Like, oh yeah, I really remember liking the show. So anyway, David, thank you so much for the Patreon request. Hopefully this answers your question, where The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is. And now I want to ask all of you folks, what do you think of this news announcement? Are you excited about any of these Netflix shows? Are there some shows that you wished were there? I mean, I do know that one of the notable absences is The Cosby Show, which is probably the most influential black sitcom of all time. I also know that it has like a very complicated legacy now, considering who starred and created in that show. But anyway, I would like to know what you think. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one. All right, let's see if we have any comments. So, let's see here. Rideshare source driver, do you like Wayne Brothers? I do. They're hit and miss, but ultimately I do. He also says Webster Show, My Wife and Kids, and Fresh Prince. I don't think Home Improvement's a black sitcom. That's particularly what the news article was talking about. But I do like Home Improvement. Granted, it is very, very easy humor. But, once in a while, I like easy humor. The one sitcom that I have never, ever, ever liked, and I know I'm going to lose some brownie points with this one, I have never liked Seinfeld. I'm sorry. I just do not think that show is funny. And if you don't believe me, go to YouTube, watch Seinfeld clips without the laugh track, and it is abysmal how unfunny it is. It is abysmal how unfunny that show is. But with that said, let's move on to main topic number 5. And while we are on the streaming wars, let's do this really, really quick one before we start getting into what I know a lot of you want to hear about, which is the Congress hearings for the big tech companies. So, Crunchyroll, the anime streaming service, has surpassed 3 million subscribers. According to Anime News Network, Crunchyroll announced on Tuesday that it had garnered more than 3 million subscribers and over 70 million registered users. The service previously announced it had reached more than 2 million subscribers in October 2018 and more than 1 million subscribers in February 2017. They also revealed their top viewed anime series, which are Black Clover, good show, Boruto, I like that show, Food Wars, not so much a fan of that. Haikyuu, I love that show, Hunter x Hunter, that is another show that is very, very popular that I just do not get the appeal behind. I do not like Hunter x Hunter at all. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which I enjoy. My Hero Academia, like it. Naruto Shippuden, good show. One Piece, great show. And Tower of God, which is a good show. Now, the reason we're talking about this really briefly is because, this kind of shows how the streaming wars will probably ultimately pick up. Because people keep asking, how many paid subscription services can people actually have? And, where do the niche markets, platforms come in? And I think this is where they fall in. Crunchyroll is the number one anime streaming website out there that's legal. Which is interesting because Funimation, who pretty much has a de facto monopoly on the anime industry in America, their Funimation Now app is not nearly as popular. But you can only pay for that. Crunchyroll, though, has paid subscribers who will avoid the ads. They have 3 million. That's respectable for a very niche product, but it has 70 million registered viewers. And those are viewers who can watch the anime, but they have ads. And the ads are what's going to be truly valuable to these companies in the long run. I think at some point there might even be a free model for Netflix. I think Netflix and Disney Plus might eventually have a free model. And while certain movies might have to stay behind the paywall, TV shows where they can put a bunch of advertising, I think that's here to stay. And so good on Crunchyroll for actually hitting that number. But anyway, I'd like to know, do any of you have Crunchyroll and what do you think of it? I'd love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. All right, the next couple topics are going to be big ones. They're going to be big ones. So, Ryan says, do you not own any seasons of Seinfeld on DVD then? I own one season. It was like $3 at Goodwill, but it's not a fun show in my opinion. And Righteous Horse Driver says, I don't think Seinfeld is funny. He is on Chicago billboards and no one else old school. Well, Seinfeld himself, I think, is funny. But the show Seinfeld, I don't like. All right. So, with that out of the way, let's get to at least 2 topics of what happened yesterday at the antitrust hearings at Congress. Now, I had debated how I'm going to do this, and chances are we'll be talking about these hearings for the whole week because there was so much to unpack. A brief little overture of it, though, in terms of performance, I think Apple came off the best, although they still had at least one issue, which we're going to talk about today. That was a problem. I believe after that, Google, even though I don't believe them when they say they did not do certain things, came off the most credible. Then Facebook, and the worst that came off, no surprise, was Amazon. But the interesting thing about Amazon is that, unlike the other companies, everyone in the room, more or less, seemed to have done their homework on Amazon and seemed to acknowledge what some of Amazon's problem was. And Bezos got grilled on the seat. Bezos was so totally grilled, and he made some admissions that I think are going to bite him in the butt. So GeekWire wrote this article, What We Learned About the Antitrust Case about Amazon. And let's go down a little bit, because the first couple paragraphs, sorry, my back is scratching, are kind of inconsequential. Here's where it starts getting important. The tone changed when the congresswoman from Bezos district in Washington state had her turn. Representative Pramila Jayapal asked Bezos about a Wall Street Journal investigation from April that found Amazon uses detailed data on third-party sellers in its marketplace to inform the development of in-house products. And she asked, the issue that we're concerned about here is very simple. You have access to data that far exceeds the sellers on your platform with whom you compete. You have access to the entirety of sellers' pricing and inventory information, past, present, and future. And you dictate the participation of third-party sellers on your platform so you can set the rules of the game for your competitors but not follow those rules yourselves. Do you think that's fair to the mom-and-pop businesses who can sell on your platform? My answer, no. In fact, on my end, just to get a little bit more personal, one of the items that has been selling very well on my store have been a set of tools. A really unique set of tools that I only got from one source. And I've been selling them, a few of them a week, actually. And then a couple weeks ago, the sale stopped. And when I checked, Amazon was selling those tools. And they were getting them from the same supplier. So I didn't buy any more, and I basically fire saled the remaining ones. But yeah, Amazon saw my data, saw that I had a unique item that was selling, and they undercut me, the jerks. But anyway, it's a thread that other lawmakers, including the subcommittee's chair David Sisselin, would later pick up. The panel cited interviews with third-party sellers who claim Amazon abused its position as operator of the marketplace to compete with them, in some cases driving the sellers out of business, which they have not done to me, although I did just get an A to Z claim from someone who says they never got their item, but they signed for it, so normally I would just refund if someone said that, but since I have it pretty clearly that they got it, I'm fighting that one. Wish me luck. Bezos said Amazon has a policy prohibiting such use of seller data, but added, I can't guarantee you that the policy has never been violated. It has been violated. We have proof it's been documented. People have testified it's been violated. That comment's going to come back to bite Amazon the butt. Amazon's treatment of third-party centers was clearly at the center of the House's inquiry and will almost certainly factor in a separate investigation that the Federal Trade Commission is conducting. The House does not have the authority to enforce antitrust laws, but the hearing does hint at the evidence that is being collected and shared with the FTC and other regulators. Representative Mary Gay Scanlon later raised a related issue with Bezos. She asked him about a controversial price war between Amazon and Diapers.com that ultimately ended in Amazon acquiring the competitor's parent company and then shutting it down. So remember what I talked about earlier about Uber and the taxis? This is where that comes back. Scanlon claimed Amazon lowered prices on diapers to drive the competitor out of business and then raised them when the competitive threat was eliminated. Which, by the way, this is what a typical company in a position of monopoly does. They undercut the competition in price. They wait till that company either goes under or they acquire, and then they raise the price again. Monopolies don't work. Now, Bezos says, I don't remember that at all. What I remember is that we matched competitor prices. And that's been Amazon's argument this whole time. We match competitor prices. Even though in almost every situation you can get stuff cheapest on Amazon. Scanlon also revealed that Amazon's behavior during the coronavirus crisis is within the scope of inquiry. She asked about a period early on in which Amazon had to prioritize essential items due to the volume of orders from customers sheltering at home. And she was quoted as saying, we've had several employees report that Amazon continued to ship non-essential items like hammocks, fish tanks, pool floaties, etc. And by the way, not to throw my wife under the bus, but she bought Loungefly purses and backpacks, because she loves the Loungefly stuff. Which, by the way, if anyone has a pink Sailor Moon Loungefly that you'd be willing to get rid of for a couple $100, please let me know. She'd really want one for Christmas. But anyway, those were being shipped to her, and that's not essential. I mean, it's fun. She likes them, but it's not essential. So I think that could be proven. She says, Mr. Bezos, were Amazon devices like Fire TV, Echo speakers, and Ring doorbells designated as essential during the pandemic? I would not be surprised if they were, because that's Amazon's business. That's their data collection. Now, Ryan Mack tweeted, of the 4 CEOs, Bezos has been the worst at dodging questions. He keeps getting pinned by the reps into admitting when he doesn't know things, and it's not pretty for him. Now, what Bezos responded to the, Amazon device question was, what I can tell you is there was no playbook for this. We moved very quickly. Demand went through the roof. It was like having a holiday selling season, but in March, and we had to make decisions very rapidly. But of course, that's a yes or no answer. Now then, Representative Joe Neguse suggested that the panel does not see Amazon's behavior in its e-commerce marketplace as isolated. He asked Bezos whether Amazon Web Services, the company's cloud arm, use information about its customers to develop competing services. As he said, the pattern emerges. We're very concerned about this innovation kill zone. Now, Bezos denied the accusation. He says, we have competitors using AWS, and we work very hard to make them successful. Netflix is one example. Hulu is another. Yeah. However, Amazon has Amazon Prime Video. So if they're providing the cloud services for Hulu and Netflix, they would be able to see what shows on Netflix and Hulu are being watched heavily, and when rights to those shows expires, Amazon could decide maybe we can make that, show creator a deal and get them off Hulu and Netflix and on to Amazon. Now, here are a couple other tweets that were really funny. Ari Levy says, whoa, Bezos doesn't know if the company requires a real name, address, and phone number from sellers? They do, for the record. In fact, they require to see your driver's license. And Nilay Patel says, will Amazon agree to report all sales of stolen goods to law enforcement and to victims to track large-scale offenders? Bezos says yes. Weird as hell? Yes, that was weird as hell. So, it is good that the lawmakers were really, my nose is itching, pressing on Bezos some of the scummy things he's doing. However, there was so much that they could have got them on that they didn't. So let's go through some of the tactics that Amazon uses their monopolistic power for. Some of these were addressed. Now, number one, Amazon is one of America's most trusted brands, but for many startups, trusting Amazon as a business partner has turned out to be a ruinous mistake. The Wall Street Journal's Dana Matali and Cara Lombardo reported this week that the Seattle Giant has often used its Alexa Fund, a venture capital fund for startups involved in voice technology, to gain access to startups' business plans and private data, only to launch its own competing products later. That needs to be investigated. In some cases, Amazon ended up crushing the startup it had invested in as a result, but that was a trade-off the company could afford to make. So basically, they invested in these startups, collected the data, and then they created their own product. And yeah, they invested in the startup, but they were really after the information so they could cut out the middleman. If the story sounds familiar, it's because Amazon has a long standard pattern of bullying, backstabbing, and bigfooting smaller business partners. Another journal investigation by Matali in April found that the company routinely uses access to data about third-party sellers on Amazon to develop its own competing private label product lines, something the company has told Congress explicitly that it doesn't do, although Bezos actually said, I can't guarantee we didn't do that, so they might have got knocked on that one. As one former employee told the paper, we knew we shouldn't, but at the same time, we are making Amazon-branded products and we want them to sell, obviously. Even Amazon's cloud platform, Amazon Web Services, has become feared by third-party developers for allegedly copying and incorporating their third-party tools into its own proprietary products. They did discuss that on the hearing. The ruthlessness has deep roots in the company's culture, according to Brad Stone's 2013 book, The Everything Store. Way back in 2009, Amazon offered to buy Quidsy, the startup behind Diapers.com. This was touched on for the hearing, so we won't go over that again. None of this to say that Amazon is uniquely unscrupulous. Facebook is famous for either copying or buying any social media startup that starts to make inroads against its dominance, with the threat of copying looming over every acquisition Overture makes. We'll be talking about that probably tomorrow. The point is not these companies or leaders are evil, it's that their ownership of dominant platforms, coupled with their sheer size and market power, allow them to both squash upstarts and expand ceaselessly into new markets that their platform enables. The more software eats the world, the more dominant software companies feast. So, they go on to like other companies, but look, they have a little section for everyone else, and then Amazon gets their own section that's much longer in this article. So, Congress got on their case about a couple of those things, but not all of them. And really, out of the 4 CEOs that testified, I think Bezos is the most likely candidate to be asked to come back. I think they're going to want to question him a little bit more, and it seems like both Republicans and Democrats really, really hate Amazon. And they might actually be unified enough about Amazon, kind of like how they're unified on China right now, that they might actually be able to get something done. As for the other companies, I don't know if they can do a whole lot else because, most of the other companies, there was not a consensus. I mean, Republicans really harped on all the companies about conservative bias, which all the companies say they don't have. I think that's ridiculous. Of course there's a conservative bias. It's just not the most important thing to me right now. But only on Amazon did the Republicans and Democrats really come together and agree that this company has too much power. Otherwise, Democrats were concerned about one thing with Facebook, Apple, and Google. Republicans were worried about another thing. And that's the kind of divisiveness that really makes it difficult to see anything changing. However, I would like to know what you think about this Bezos grilling. Do you think he was grilled thoroughly? Do you think it should have been more? Or maybe you think Bezos actually held his own very well? I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Now let's look at some of these comments. Rideshare Source Driver says, for Amazon, even vibrators are. Touche. He also says, years ago when I searched on Amazon and then apply filters, everything was correct. Now I can't see all offers if I filter. Amazon hides offers for sure. Oh yeah, because they want to steer you towards their own product. But, however, with that said, let's talk a little bit more about Amazon in our final main topic, although this one involves Apple. Now, one of the biggest things that Apple was brought on to the antitrust hearings is that Apple has a huge, huge market cornered when it comes to mobile phones. The iPhone is one of the best-selling phones of all time, if not the best-selling phone of all time. I would say Apple has at the very least half of the market. Maybe 40%, maybe 60%. Who knows? It's around there though. And as a result, Apple also has their own operating system. And they have their own app store, which they charge a 30% fee across the board. But then Apple makes their own products and prices that they don't have to collect a fee from because they own the platform. And then that means the other companies either have to charge more for their products or they have to just eat that cost. So, for example, Spotify puts their app on Android and the iOS store. The iOS store, however, they're paying a 30% fee. And Apple has Apple Music, which they don't have to pay that fee. Both services cost $10 a month. So Spotify can either make up that money by charging $15, thus putting their product at a price disadvantage, or they can keep it the same and just lose money. That was why Apple was brought in. Now, we'll talk about Apple and that maybe a little later. Honestly, Apple was kind of let off the hook. I wish Apple would be Tim Cook would be brought back because I think he was given a free pass on this one. One interesting thing that came up, though, was that apparently that 30% fee is not universal to everyone. In fact, Apple did offer a 15% fee to another major corporation to get their video app on the Apple TV platform, even though this service had their own devices they could put the app on. And who is it? Well, it was Amazon, of course. because an email showed that Apple tried to lure Amazon's Video Prime app by offering a lower 15% fee. So CNBC writes, in the summer of 2017, Apple CEO Tim Cook announced that Amazon's Prime Video service would be launching on the Apple TV set-top box after a long and noticeable absence. An email release by the House Antitrust Subcommittee on Wednesday shed new light into the negotiations that led to that announcement. It shows an Apple executive offering Amazon a 15% fee on subscriptions that signed up through the app, which is lower than Apple's customary 30% fee for most in-app purchases. The email suggests that big players can negotiate for better business terms on Apple's App Store, contradicting Apple's public stance that all apps are treated the same on its platform. Quote, we apply the rules to all developers evenly, Cook testified on Wednesday. Software makers are required to use Apple's payment mechanism for any digital purchases inside an iPhone app. Apple typically takes 30% of the initial purchase price, including 30% from the first years of subscription services that customers buy through the app, then drops the fee to 15% the second year subscription. The 30% fee is a core part of Spotify's antitrust complaint with EU regulators, which is still not resolved. In May 2016, Bezos told an interviewer that Amazon refused to sell devices like Apple TV or Google's Chromecast on Amazon.com because it was unable to agree on terms for placing Amazon's Prime Video on those devices. This is where you start getting to see things that are really, really scary. Like, they all have their little monopolies. Like, Apple owns a monopoly of the phones, really. Amazon owns the retail thing. So Amazon says, hey, we want our app on your devices or we won't sell your devices. And Apple's like, well, you won't sell our devices. Well, we'll take your app off our phone. And it's pretty ridiculous when you get down to it. But, and here's the other thing about Amazon, of course, because Amazon has their own devices. And, you know, the thing is, they have the upper hand. They sell these devices. If someone's going to buy something, it's most likely going to be from Amazon. So if Amazon takes these Chromecast and Apple devices off the phone, they're going to push their own. Well, guess what? That creates more of a monopoly for them. So Amazon said, well, Bezos said, when we sell those devices, we want our player, our Prime Video player, to be on the device, and we want it to be on the device with acceptable business terms. You can always get the player on the device. The question is, can you get it on here with acceptable business terms? At some point later in the year, Bezos met with Apple Senior Vice President Eddie Chu and discussed business terms for this and other matters, according to the document released Wednesday. Jeff and I really enjoyed our time together, emailed Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos in November 2016. Here are the details of what we discussed on Prime Video. Amazon Prime Video app in iOS and Apple TV, 15% revenue share for customers that sign up using the app uses our payment. No rev sharing for customers that already subscribe. In addition, Chu said that if Amazon was able to sell services like Showtime in its app, that Apple would only take 15% if the customer originally signed up through Apple. It's not clear if the companies ended up agreeing to the terms in the email, although the Amazon Prime Video app appeared on Apple TV only in 2017. A version of Amazon's video app has been available on iOS since 2012, and it's not known what terms were there before or after Chu's email to Bezos. So here's why I think Congress honed in on this. And really, this was one of the only things Apple was grilled on. It's one of the only things Apple was grilled on, which is amazing because there's a lot of reasons to grill Apple. But Apple has an operating system. Like, they have a device that almost everyone uses, and it's a phone. Technically, it's supposed to be a public utility. And yet it's a public utility where Apple owns all of it. They own the device, they own the operating system, they own the store. And as we have pointed out, especially with Spotify, there are huge conflicts because Apple sees what's popular, they make their own version of service, and the competitors have to either raise prices and put themselves at a disadvantage, or they just have to suck it up. Now, one of the reasons that Apple does that is they say we treat everyone the same, 30%. So we're not treating anyone differently. You know, we're not giving some companies like a lower fee at the disadvantage of the smaller players. And yet, if this is true, if Amazon got a 15% reduction fee, then that's not fair. It shows that basically Apple, who owns the control of all of this, can be bought off. And if a competitor just gave them enough money, they would give them a far more favorable term to which to take out their competitors. And I think that's why this email caught Congress attention. Now, again, I think Apple was let way, way off the hook. And, of course, it's funny because the one thing that Apple was truly grilled on involved Amazon, which I think, one of my things I'm taking from this whole thing is that Amazon really was the big fish for Congress. Congress wants to do something about Amazon more than anyone else, but, they don't want to look like they're just singling Amazon out, and it's a problem for everyone. So they brought everyone in. Now, they all said something I think is going to come back to bite them. This is not the end. I believe we will see more of this. And we're going to discuss more about some of the other revelations, particularly some with Facebook, tomorrow and Monday. In the meantime, though, what do you think about this revelation with Apple? Do you think this is Apple abusing antitrust laws, or do you think this is just competition? I would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. All right, that is the end of our topics. Now then, let's see what some people are saying. So, Rideshare Source Driver, thank you, by the way, for being here and being so active, Rideshare Source Driver. I was told Apple computers work better because it's same company software and hardware. That is true. It's proprietary, and that is an advantage. Windows users get told it's hardware issue. Hardware says it's software issues, different companies. It is a little bit more sporadic when it comes to PC. However, PCs are customizable. If the video card fails, I can just replace that video card. If, like right now, my wife's Mac Airbook, which is like 7 years old, so it's definitely had its life. It's having an internal hardware failure issue right now. Now, if it were a PC, I'd pop the thing open and I'd replace the part. But because it's an Apple product, I got to wait till the Apple store is open, and then I got to take it to them. So that kind of feeds into my I believe they're a monopoly scenario, but who knows. And Stevie Kurtz is here. He's like, hello, Kevin. I try to be active. Oh, well, don't worry. I'm just glad that you're here. And hey, you're here. You're giving thumbs up. You're commenting. You're spending time with me. I really appreciate that all around. So anyway, folks, we went much longer than we normally do today. We did 70 minutes. So, I guess we're going to now take a moment. Might as well spend another 5 minutes to explain, because as I mentioned, I did get another job. The old job, I'm not there anymore. I might tell you why in the future, but not right now. And so the new job will still allow me time to do this podcast. We'll kind of see how I'm feeling, though. We might slightly tweak it where I do the podcast 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then the replays can play throughout the rest of the week. That's what we might be doing for the podcast starting next week. I do want to do like a little bit of an update on how the podcast has worked out. I have largely been happy with it, and I'd kind of like to tell everyone why I've been happy with it. But that's neither here nor there. Stevie Kerp says you can replace Mac parts, just more compact. Also, if you try to replace your own parts, Apple puts it in their thing where, hey, once you open this thing up and you try to fix it yourself, your warranty's void, or they won't fix it. It's pretty. I have issues with all these tech companies. But anyway, I would like to thank you all for joining me today, spending time as we talk tech, apps, and even a little bit of entertainment. We will be splitting up the replays and be sharing them throughout the weekend, so keep an eye out for those if you missed any stories. And remember, some of these videos show up on The Failed Journalist and the newly rebranded the Apptrepreneur Media. It used to be the Apptrepreneur Vlogs, and now it's the Apptrepreneur Media. Ryan said, I missed a comment from Ryan. He said, I'm doing good. I really enjoyed both the new videos that you upload on your vlog channel today, which is now the media channel, the Spartacus 4K and Criterion Collection Haul. Well, thank you. I'm glad you like that. All right, folks. Thank you for spending time. You know the drill. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.